in your mind, what constitutes a successful and effective president?
Well, I tried to rate the presidents how the founders would rate them if they were here rating them. They would rate them on limiting government, limiting executive power to the original limited conception of what the president was, and also whether their policies promoted peace, prosperity, and liberty, which was, of course, the goal.
So John Tyler finishes number one.
Yes, surprisingly, because we tend to see history through our current state. And our current state is a massive government of 43% of the GDP. And back then, of course, the federal government was like maybe 1% or something of the GDP. So, you know, it grew, and it stayed that way throughout until about 1900, and then it started to creep up a little bit. But still, until World War I, it was a very small portion of the country's GDP. But now, of course, we have a massive government, and many historians and that sort of thing, you know, buy into that, and that's how they evaluate presidents, by activism. What did they do? Well, you can do stuff. I prefer undoing rather than doing, but even doing nothing may be better than some of the things that they're doing.
So could you argue that a weak president, or at least the way that we conventionally consider a strong president or a weak president, that a weak president would score rather highly?
Yes, I think so. I wouldn't call him a weak president. I'd say a constitutionally limited president, because the founders had intended the Congress, the people's branch, because we are a republic, right? They wanted to avoid what the kings of Europe did by dragging their people into war for the benefit of the king, and the cost in blood and treasure would fall to the people. So they wanted a strong legislature, and they wanted a weaker executive, or a constitutionally limited executive, and of course that's been flipped on its head. The Congress has been stripped of a lot of its powers, some by the executive and some by Congress willingly giving it up because they don't want to take the responsibility for it. So we see that the original, as I say, I try to evaluate this on the basis of what the founders would want, and of course we're in a much different place now, unfortunately.
And conversely, Woodrow Wilson finishes dead last.
Yes, I think because he instituted permanent big government by going into World War I, and I think World War I was avoidable for the United States, certainly. We kind of look back on Germany as being evil because of World War II, but back in World War I, it was much more ambiguous who was at fault, and the Allies, including our French and British allies, and the Russians were also at fault. And after World War I, there was a revulsion because it was found out the Bolsheviks released their correspondence with Britain and France, and the Britain and France were trying to grab colonies. And so the American people said, we were fighting, we lost all these people in this massive war just to help these people grab territory. So there was a revulsion at the time. We don't hear that now because we're so distant from it. And Woodrow Wilson has been sort of elevated as one of the better presidents, but I think if you go back and look at it, the war was avoidable. And of course, Woodrow Wilson helped bring Hitler to power by insisting on the abdication of the Kaiser after World War I, which was totally unnecessary. Germany was a constitutional monarchy before the war and was vilified. It was actually the most progressive state in Europe. It had the widest voting franchise, and there are many things wrong with the Kaiser's personality, but I think Germany has been unnecessarily vilified for that war. And of course, the U.S. mobilized its economy for the first time ever for a war. And of course, this led to big government, it led to the New Deal, it led to World War II. And so Woodrow Wilson is responsible, I think, at least in part, for all of that.
All right, Ivan Eland, thank you very much.
Thank you.